Welcome to Rumours Intelligence Podcast. Today we have a very special guest with me, my co-writer and esteemed colleague, Reece. Ron has an incredible career as a counterintelligence, counter-terrorist analyst. He worked with the Iraqi Survey Group from 2004 and 2006. Also, he was involved in some other task force. Together, we delve into the complexities of the Zelenko Protocol. Ron, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Sammy. I appreciate it. Pleasure to be here.
Can you give us a bit of a background of how you transitioned from the Iraqi Survey Group to co-write a book with me?
Wow, it's a long story. I worked in the Iraq Survey Group, which had been tasked with, and the official statement was uncovering the truth about Saddam's weapons of mass destruction program. And I went to work for them as a contractor in 2004. They shut down in May of 2005, and then I took another contract to work with a counterterrorism task force, pretty much doing the same thing. But the nature of my job was access all of the intelligence reports within the theater from all sources, and then move that to other subject matter experts so that they could evaluate the reports and provide a high level analysis. So I had to understand what they were doing and what they were looking for. And that exposed me to all of the intelligence within the theater, and especially that of our organization regarding weapons of mass destruction. Now, some people may recall that history 20 years ago. They dealt with, potential anthrax. Nobody really ever knew what Saddam had in his research labs. They worried about nuclear and chemical, but Saddam also had a biological weapons program underway. So that was a lesser known factor in our search. Moving on to 2020, now we have the pandemic coming out of China, and I grew quite worried because I believed this could be a lab leak. It had all of the hallmarks of such. And then I started looking for ways of protecting my family. I had a 5-year-old daughter at the time. She's older now, but she was 5 at the time. And I knew the possibilities because of all the conversations I'd had with various subject matter experts within the ISG. I didn't have a virological background, but my radar was up. And this is serious. And this could become, so I didn't mess around with it. I really thought it might be the hallmarks of a biological weapon. So I knew there had to be some type of solution because nobody creates a biological weapon without creating the antidote, because they're just as susceptible as everybody else. That was just an implicit logic. So I started looking for those types of solutions. And then over the last 4 years of research, incessant research, you and I met on Twitter, now X, and formed a relationship. And you kept urging me to write and to get more involved. And that's what we did. We wrote a book.
That's right. The Zelenko, Protocol Z, sorry. So for our listeners, can you give us who are not familiar with the Zelenko and its protocol, can you give us an overview and a background story, and why is it significant?
Well, essentially, Zev Zelenko, he was a family physician out of New York, a Hasidic Jewish community. And it's really bizarre because Zev and I followed a dual track in our discovery for a solution. He was looking at many of the same things that I was. And one day he came across a video that had been sent to him, I believe a family member, as I understand it. And it was from a YouTube channel called MedCram. This is co-founded by a critical care pulmonary specialist by the name of Dr. Roger Swelt out of California. And he's a professor. He's an associate professor, and he loved dealing with molecular biology. And he had come across this study on the use of to inhibit the replication of RNA viruses like SARS and influenza, and using zinc in combination with what is known as an ionophore. And the analogy is best to say zinc is like a bullet, the ionophore is like a gun. and various guns, various ionophores are bigger caliber, so are more. And Zev had watched this video, and so had I. And what it disclosed, what it analyzed was that if you're able to take and increase its concentration inside of our cells by literally on a chemical level, shooting it or facilitating its entry into the cell, increasing that concentration would inhibit the replication of the SARS influenza viruses and affect every RNA virus: Zika, measles, mumps, rubella, Ebola, Middle East respiratory syndrome. It would inhibit them all because they all use the same replicative enzyme. Um, and so that launched the journey in the quest. And Zev implemented this by the use of zinc and hydroxychloroquine.
Yeah.
The zinc was the bullet, the hydroxychloroquine was the zinc ionophore, the gun. And he treated 500 of his high risk patients with comorbidities, cancer, high risk for SARS. And he kept 84% of them from progressing to hospitalization compared to people who did not receive this early treatment.
The, the, the subtitle of the book is How the Zelenko Protocol Could Have Prevented the Global Lockdown. Can you expand on how would it have done that? What does that mean?
Well, if we go back to the underlying premise of all this, is that people are zinc deficient. And so we're not getting enough of this vital metal ion that our body uses to control it regulates, it plays a role in the regulation of our immunity and many other things. And most of us don't get enough zinc. We don't get enough vitamin D either. So it's a double whammy. So if we had been able to use early treatment or prophylaxis, there would have been no need for a lockdown because people would have had the effect of to be able to inhibit the viral growth, the viral replication. If the virus can't replicate, then it can't cause an immune overreaction that then puts you into the hospital with COVID. And that's what COVID is. COVID is effectively your immune system overreacting, inducing inflammatory that as a result of this viral infection. So the key is to prevent the replication of the virus by inhibiting its ability to copy itself in our cells.
Zelenko Protocol is based on a few papers stating that. One of them is written by Ralph Barrett, 2010. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, that's correct. This is probably my 15 minutes of fame here. Is in May 2020, I had followed the Zelenko. I had researched the paper. I'd read it a number of times, but I wanted more information. And so I started going through all the authors of the study, pardon me, uh, and I came across Ralph Barrett's name, and I had no idea who Ralph Barrett was. And neither did Zev. Zev had no idea at that time in the spring of 2020 the credentials and reputation of Ralph Barrett out of the University of North Carolina in Chapel. And so when I started, I'm awestruck. I'm literally shaking my head at what I've just. Ralph Barrett has over 40 years of experience in working with RNA viruses of various types. Maybe many may know now by watching congressional hearings. He's very controversial because he, in fact, worked with the Wuhan lab lead researcher, Zheng Li, who was known as the Bat Lady. She would like to go collect bats looking for RNA. And so Ralph Barrett was a collaborator with her, and he actually authored together with her dealing with viruses quite similar to the existing SARS virus. So subsequently, Barrett was made a member of the National Academy of Sciences. And that doesn't happen unless you're top. And so there's probably no one out, very few people out there with more knowledge of how RNA virus and how to create vaccines and how to inhibit. There's very few people that are more highly qualified than Dr. Ralph Barrick. And inadvertently, Zev and I had both stumbled on this paper that had been authored by Dr. Barrick using common natural ingredients to block the replication of a number of different RNA viruses, SARS-1, influenza, and then he postulated that it would also apply to polio. Many people don't realize polio is an RNA virus, but yet we inoculate and vaccinate people around the world for polio. But the implicit logic here is that people are zinc deficient because all Barrick did was increase the level of zinc inside of our cells to be able to inhibit that viral replication. So if he can do it in that research, then we can do it in our bodies. And that's the ultimate essence of Protocol Z, is mitigating zinc deficiency and then being prepared if we do get struck by another nasty virus, which there are many out there, that we're armed with an early treatment therapeutic that would, counter any need to lock us down. If you can block the viral replication using natural ingredients, all right, natural broad spectrum small molecule, that's what it uses now. That's the scientific term. But some people might call it homeopathic. I like to use their language, broad spectrum small molecules. And that's researching, and they're quite effective. I found them to be quite effective in my case, and my friends and families have found them to be effective using zinc, hydroxychloroquine, or green tea excitin, a number of different guns that you can use to shoot zinc into your cells, increase the concentration temporarily.
So, long story short, you're telling me that the father of SARS-CoV-2 had came up with an antidote for a bioweapon. What would you call it? Because you're kind of a specialist in hunting down WMDs for the American government, right?
Well, I don't know if I'd call it a specialist, but I certainly was around the specialists. And so I had access to all of their thought analysis. I learned a lot when I was in Iraq. It was but yeah, no, I think that it has all potential aspects of a bio, right?
Okay.
And there are economic reasons that you might see that, but that's different. That could be an hour-long program in itself. But if what do nations do when they go to war? They mobilize every economic resource to stave off economic collapse or financial collapse, right? And to fight the war, they build tanks, planes, whatever. But in a biological warfare, you can achieve a lot of this economic stimulus by using a non-destructive, it kills people, but it doesn't destroy the infrastructure or the cities. It just kills people. So it's, I guess you would say, if you want to create a mobilization of trillions of dollars of economic stimulus from the government going into the pockets of certain people that are providing solutions for the viruses they created. Yeah, we call it rent seeking. You create a problem and then you provide the solution to it, and you get people to pay for it. So yeah, I mean it's controversial. I will admit that, but my logic and my analysis in this says, yeah, there's a lot of fingers pointing towards that scenario, and we were all victims of this grand scheme of I call this, but I think enough evidence and logic backing that I feel confident with that. So, what's the best way to undermine that type of biological warfare? You provide the antidote. You find the antidote. And I think that's what Ralph Barrick was doing is he was working on a natural prophylaxis as well as an emergent natural ingredient antidote. And Zelenko believed this as well. It's kind of
Yeah.
implicit in its logic.
Yeah. So the 2020 happens. They create task force around the world, WHO, US government, all that, but we don't hear about the biggest specialist in coronaviruses on the planet Earth, Ralph Baric. Not a sign, not a word. And you, myself, and Dr. Zelenko and some others get word of it, and we're trying to get the message out. We get absolute crickets. We've got the names, we've got the breakdown, we have the paperwork, we have everything, and this leads us to writing a book together. Can you explain how that process, how did that happen from your point of view?
Well, after my discovery of the linkage between Ralph Baric and the Zelenko Protocol in May of 2020, I spent time trying to, I spent almost every day. I was on Twitter or Facebook, anybody that would listen to me. And I just put up my latest findings and talk about the solution, even with people talking about ivermectin, which is considered to be another treatment, early treatment, or even a longer term treatment. I'm not against ivermectin, but it's a drug. The problem we have, my belief, and I think it's a strongly supported belief, is that we are inherently zinc and vitamin D deficient. We talk about
Mm-hmm.
vitamin D, but we don't talk about the zinc aspect. Everybody knows people were vitamin D deficient who had COVID, but very few people know the majority of illnesses, not just COVID, AIDS, not what's oh well, a number of diseases involve zinc deficiency. And when you look at
Yeah.
the fundamental Occam's razor, when you go and you're trying to look for what the real answer is, your solutions, all right, different assumptions, and the most accurate assumption is likely to be the most simple one. And zinc plays a system. And if we're deficient, then everything else in our immune system is not going to function properly. And that also applies to cancer. That's been the discussion for years. And I wasn't having a great deal of success on Twitter. And I've talked to people about Baric. I mean, leadership. Right? I won't mention their names, but if I did, most people watching this podcast would probably know who I'm talking if they follow this subject. And they've all blown it off. They don't want to talk about Ralph Baric for some reason. They'll talk about early treatment options and hydroxychloroquine and all that, but they don't want to talk about Ralph Baric. And I find that rather odd because you have to invoke Ralph Baric's reputation, or they're going to you
Yeah.
or denigrate you and disparage it. It's going to have the ammunition to be successful. If you invoke Ralph Baric's name, you've invoked 40 years of virological experience. You invoked one of the top scientists involved in gain of function, making viruses more deadly. He's a member of the National Academy of Sciences, a very powerful man. If you don't invoke his name, then we're not going to be successful. And that's my role, is to invoke his name and connect him forever. Because here's my view. In 2010, Ralph Baric comes up with a protocol in vitro. This is in a petri dish, but search. And he was very successful. It didn't take a lot of zinc to make it happen to where he was able to inhibit viral replication. But he should have immediately conducted the live animal testing on cows, chickens, ferrets, whatever, do the live, because this doesn't just apply to people. This applies to animals, our livestock, our chickens that are stricken by all these RNA viruses. And we want to vaccinate every one of them, all right, because that's where the money is. But we could supplement their feed. So you need to conduct the live animal testing to validate Baric's research. And it should have been done in 2010. It still hasn't been done, all right? And it should be done. It needs to be done. This is the Operation Warp Speed that should have been applied. Is broad spectrum, small molecule, natural ingredient, early treatment therapeutics. And Baric is still working on We call them BSSM, broad spectrum small molecules. He's got a nonprofit by the name of READDI, READDI, that focuses on broad spectrum small molecule early treatment therapeutics, not vaccines, none of this other stuff. You treat the sick. You don't jab all with experimental, gene therapies slash, vaccines. You treat the people who are sick. You treat them early. Problem solved. You don't have lockdowns, do you?
Could he? Could it be? Could the reason be of him being so silent is him being involved in this dual usage for this kind of research, doing research in gain of function as a pretext for looking for vaccines, while the main cause, the main reason of having this gain of function research is for the weapons department, the defense. So there's two narratives at the same time. One is for pharma, and one is for industrial defense. Is that what do you know about that?
The Biological Weapons Treaty was signed in the 70s, actually applied in 75, and no nation was able to continue researching on biological weapons, the use of them. But they find workarounds. So the government, whatever, the officials within the Defense Department or CIA or wherever, and I was once part of that community. So I can understand the logic. They think that another country might be doing this. So we need to have a program. So let's continue our research and do it under the guise of vaccine research. Okay, this becomes the cover story. Everything we do on biological warfare or gain of function is now for the purpose of vaccines against all future, severe RNA outbreak infection. But we're going to work to make that happen, because we're going to find ways to make highly pathogenic RNA viruses more transmissible into humans. Viruses that normally never infected humans to begin with, we've figured out ways to acid structures. A great example is H5N1, which many of the listeners probably have heard of, now being found in dairy cattle, cats, mice. It's amazing all the different animals that are certainly suddenly contracting the avian flu. Very, very, coincidental. And just a couple years after the SARS. So they're making these things worse and more highly pathogenic into human populations, which never existed before, or to a very limited extent. But here Ralph Baric came up with a solution. He explicitly said all of these RNA viruses are unified. He used that word, unified, by their use of this enzyme that's called RNA-dependent RNA polymerase. Replicase, 3D, it's a 3D protein printer is what it is. It's the software for the virus. What's that?
The RDRP, yeah? It's the RDRP, right?
Yeah, because it's a long name, RNA-dependent RNA polymerase. You call it replicase. Now they're starting replicon. They changed the name so you can't find, they don't want you to refer to what the actual enzyme is. But Ralph Baric figured out how to do the replication of this viral replicase, this RDRP, using natural ingredients. He used zinc, right? And he used something called pyrithione. And for the longest time, I had no idea what the heck pyrithione was. And when I finally started digging, it's like, okay, I don't care. I'm going to follow hydroxychloroquine and green tea extract. I don't need, if I haven't heard of it in the store. But it turned out when I dove deeper into that rabbit hole, pyrithione is an extract of Persian shallots, onions, little small colored onions that grow in the mountains of Iran originally, and are widely used in cooking there. That is an extract of that plant. All natural, probably costs less than $5 to inhibit the replication of an RNA virus. Amazing discovery, Nobel winning prize level discoveries. And Ralph Baric just kind of shuffled to the back of his cabinet, never pursued it in live animal testing. I want to ask him why. I don't know. He has to answer these questions. I can offer my opinion, but I'm not going to defame the man. He's already written his own record. You know, he has to answer some questions. I don't want to disparage him, but you know, there's some really serious questions he has to be required to answer. But why he did not advocate for the use of natural early treatment, at the very least, zinc sufficiency. People no longer being zinc deficient. All right, it's a critical part of our body's makeup. You know, and maybe they're inducing zinc deficiency. I don't know. That's the conspiratorial side of me. I have to believe that. That's another subject.
You mean critical thinking side of you? My understanding is the conspiracy theory is a made-up term by the CIA. Thus, it doesn't really exist. As a critical thinker, being raised in France is part of the heritage, the patrimoine culturel, we should say. You were talking about this fighting with the Persian echelot. Now, Ron, what do you think are the most crucial findings we've presented in this book?
Other than offering modifications, the Zelenko Protocol, where we don't see chloroquine, real drug, uh, there are natural ingredients that we can take. You know, I'm drinking right now, and I'm going to give a shameless plug in my cup. I'm drinking a green tea. It's a green tea extract product, EGCG, and I flavored it to taste like lemon, you know, iced lemon tea. And I drink it every day. And I take my zinc, and it's, you know, it's kept me from getting sick. That I can certainly attest to.
Well, do
I've
you want to
had
tell us
four
more?
instances. Yeah, I've had 4 instances where I contracted something over the last 4 years. I don't know what it was. I never got PCR tested, but I had raging fevers, one of them up to 103. I felt like the world was crashing down on me. I mean, everybody should know that feeling. It's like, oh my God, I'm in trouble. And
Mm-hmm.
so I took 200 milligrams of zinc. I would take my green tea extract, and I would take quinine. I even took a little bit of the horse paste. Next morning, my fever's gone. 24 hours, not even that, 12 hours, because I do this before I went to bed. Next morning, my fever's gone. I'm tired because I just had a raging battle while I slept, but I was well on my way to recovery. And that's happened 4 times in the last 4 years. But now that I'm taking my drink every day and I'm taking more zinc uh, and boosting those levels up, I haven't been sick at all. And I have people walking around me all the time wearing masks, afraid of catching a virus, and I'm not afraid.
How do you hope the readers will use this information, and what impact do you hope it will have?
Well, I think what we have to focus on is that if people are creating biological viruses for whatever purpose, we can just have an opinion on that. We are going to have to defend ourselves. Nobody else is going to do it for us. They're in this to make money, to get the governments to spend money into their bank accounts. And if they're involved in also creating the viruses, then we're the cattle. We have to defend ourselves. We cannot depend upon them to defend us properly because they have. So basically, zinc is one of the most critical metal ions that our physiology requires. We don't need a lot. Most people only need about 15 milligrams of elemental zinc every day as we get older. For myself, the older you get, the less capable you are of absorbing it because of our diets, different factors. So boosting your zinc will be important. It'll help you sleep better. If you're having problems sleeping and you're taking melatonin, I
Mm-hmm.
used to take 15 milligrams of melatonin every night just to get to sleep. Now I don't take it at all because I take zinc before I go to sleep. Drink my green tea. And so I think that I've really, it's fundamental. And it's not just zinc, it's magnesium, selenium, iron, copper, all these different metal ions are critical, as well as the proteins in a proper diet, organically sourced if possible. But the metal ions are kind of like the glue that put all of our amino acids together to help create the proteins that make up our physiology. And if we're lacking in those metal ions, that's going to work properly. And this is certainly the case. Now, you ask me, um, what blew me away about when I started researching this book again and trying to flesh it out, what else can I add to the book? Something called the P53 protein. This is a protein that our DNA has embedded in it, and its role is like a master regulatory protein. It regulates many other functions within our body, including our immunity. It something called interferon. Think of it like you've got a CEO of a company or a chief information officer of a company. All right, they regulate certain aspects of the corporate structure. If they see a problem, they send emails, text messages, phone calls to their department heads. So that's the pathway. Go find out what the problem is, then report back to me, and then go fix the problem. All right. And this is what we call an immunological pathway of defense. And P53 is strongly involved in regulating that process for it. So if it's not functioning properly, then the rest of our immune response is not going to function everywhere. Now, what I discovered about P53 is that it's heavily dependent on zinc when it's created by our, well, that's another story. P53 must have zinc to properly fold in its functioning form. All proteins fold in a different way. So that revelation that P53 requires zinc, and if we're zinc deficient, it misfolds. All right, it becomes what's called a prion. And most people have heard of that related to mad cow disease and Alzheimer's and Creutzfeldt-Jacobs syndrome. Interesting coincidence, isn't it? P53
Yes.
protein misfolds and becomes a prion. Possibly that might be something that links to prion disease in humans, zinc deficiency and copper deficiency. So that's a speculation. I think it's a good theory, but it's certainly, why would we want to be zinc deficient? There's no benefit to it. Being zinc sufficient, being copper, being magnesium and iron, all of the metal ions that our bodies require. Why would anyone want to be deficient in those? I would rather fast for 4 weeks, and not eat anything than to, be metal deficient because my body and my physiology requires all of those metallic compounds, those elements, to be able to properly function. So, yeah, it's the Occam's razor, and this is why we wrote Protocol Z. It's Zelenko and one factor we should look at. Zinc is critical. Okay, we don't need a lot again, but it is critical to our function. My reading, my research uncovered that it's used 3,000 different proteins, up to close to 3,000 different proteins in our body. To make those proteins, to get those proteins to work properly, zinc. And if you're zinc deficient, then you're going to have problems making those proteins. It's also, um, and if we don't have sufficient zinc, those enzymes are not going to function properly. And that creates this cascading effect throughout our physiology due to this zinc deficiency. So it's a simple problem to resolve. I'm not saying it's going to cure everything, but it might help mitigate your body from falling victim to things like cancer or RNA viruses or many other types of pathogens. It's certainly, you build your house on a strong foundation, and the ultimate part of your foundation are these metal ions.
Ron, given your extensive experience in counterintelligence and counterterrorism, was the COVID event an attack or a simple transfer of wealth, like business as usual? What was
Well, it's
your,
both.
or a bit of both?
It's
Sorry?
both. It's
Ah,
both.
can you?
You know, I have to look at the one of the it was a conference, a war game in a sense, right? For pandemic response by various governments, and it was called Event 201. And it was sponsored by Johns Hopkins University out in DC and several other characters, Gates being one of them, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, as well as the World Economic Forum. All right. Some people just call it the WEF. They all meet in Davos, the rich 1%. All of the pharmaceutical company CEOs are members of the World Economic. And they predicted all of the government responses that were enacted. In fact, it was a war game of how governments should respond to a pandemic. And there was the policy recommendations that they put forward that governments. But when you look at the fact that the pharmaceutical companies, the CEOs, or Bill Gates, who helped finance and invest in these vaccine manufacturers, netted huge profits off of the extortion. Because that's what it is. You create a virus, you spread it. All right, government leaders, if you really want a solution, we have this vaccine. It's experimental, but you should try it. Right? Calm people down and it'll, you know, pardon my, sarcasm there, but yes, we've all heard that. The montages of the media and how they excoriate people who are unvaccinated, refuse to be vaccinated, um, and the restrictions upon us, lockdowns, travel restrictions. You have to have a mask on to go into a mall or any place of business. Craziness. It's just insanity, but it was quite effective. And now you have people that have been traumatized and brainwashed that still wear masks in their car. They'll drive by themselves down the road. We've all seen it. People driving down the road with a mask on in their car. Who's going to
Mhm,
infect them? Is their car
mhm.
going to infect them? You know, pardon me. So yeah, I believe there was a conspiracy here, and the money was taken from taxpayers' deficit spending.
Yeah,
There's speculation that we're on the verge of a recession, and so they needed to find a justification for a large
yeah.
global injection of stimulus that would normally be like a World War II level. Hey, we got out of the Great Depression because we had World War II. We had all this stimulus money and manufacturing and planes, tanks, ships, soldiers under uniform. We're paying them all, and it creates this huge economic stimulus, but it also
Mhm.
created huge devastation in a number of economies. The U.S. economy being one of the greatest one that emerged unscathed. War. So, a biological warfare, logically, sure. If you can create a pathogen that kills people and doesn't destroy your infrastructure, and it forces, trillions of dollars of government stimulus, yeah. But what happens when that stimulus runs out? Which where we might be right now.
Yeah, no.
It's a theory. So are they going to do it
Um,
again, or are we going to go into a real? How much money are going to? How much money are the coffers of certain individuals who benefit from these crises that they create?
so through the last 4 years, um, what I observed is that the virus comes out. It seems very obvious it's man-made. Thus, it has a viral load in decay as it reproduces itself. The early treatment is repressed. Natural immunity is made up. Suddenly, masks are imposed. The Singapore's business of oil and gas gets replaced by latex gloves or whatever gloves they use and masks. And it felt like we were mitigating the illness because it was not as deadly as it was portrayed by the media. The result was let's get rid of early treatment. Let's impose masks, which technically will like it's not good for you. Think of spitting on a tissue and strapping that tissue to your face with elastics for 8 hours. You would never do that if you had a just 5 years ago. You would never ever do that. And do not treat any illness. So flu, stay home until it's too late, and then we're going to stick you on remdesivir, which has a lethal rate, a fatality rate just below Ebola. Remdesivir kills less than Ebola by 10%, something like that.
Yeah. Let me address remdesivir. Okay.
Okay.
Ralph Baric was one of the partners in the development of remdesivir. And many people do not understand how that drug works, whether it has long-term adverse effects or not. I'm not going to speak to that because I don't think it's been appropriately tested. It very well may. But remdesivir does the same thing as the Zelenko Protocol. It is an RDRP, replicase inhibitor. Yet they were giving it to people in the hospital, right? That's not when the virus is replicating. The virus already replicated to the extent that your immune system went into an overreactive cytokine cascade and inflammatory response that drove you into the hospital, right? The virus has already replicated and done its damage. Now it's an inflammatory problem, mitigating the damage from your immune system, all right? So why would you give remdesivir only to hospitalized patients, right? For a cancer patient, right? You've been diagnosed with cancer. Your doctor says, oh, we're going to wait until you're at stage 4, and then we're going to apply chemotherapy, right? That's going to be what we do. We don't want to start it right now. It's too early, right? We're going to start in stage 4. And you die from that. Would your family be able to sue for wrongful death with criminal malpractice? You're giving chemotherapy to patients at stage 4 instead of at stage 1, right? That's what they did with remdesivir. They should have given it at stage 1 where the virus is replicating to stop the replication. But no, they gave it to them at stage 4 when it was of no use. If there
Stage
was
4 is not
replication.
treating. Sorry, stage 4 is not
Yeah,
really treating people. It's more like a reanimation now. You're reanimating someone. The virus is already gone. Now you're like bringing down the immune response, trying to calm that down, and just bringing something back.
Yeah, exactly. You're trying to
Death. It's
reduce
not treating. It's
your body goes into this overreact. There's a whole cascade of responses that your body utilizes. Temperature goes up. You're sending out tons of T cells. It doesn't know what it's dealing with, so it just like kill everything that looks infected, right? And that causes a
okay.
lot of inflammatory distress. And you'll have bacterial infections that will then result because your body is focused only on destroying that virus, okay, that's there present. So if it's a different treatment strategy. So if you're going to use early treatment, you must use it early. You apply it the minute you get a fever or you feel any symptoms coming on, or that you've been exposed to somebody that is sick. And that's when you would use the early treatment approach. 220 milligrams of zinc sulfate, zinc citrate for no longer than 4 or 5 days. Right? If you need it longer than that, and you're still running a fever, you probably don't have an RNA virus. And again, I'm adding the hydroxychloroquine or the green tea extract, 400 per day. Vitamin D, of course, is helpful. All the other vitamins, you want to stay sufficient in those. But when you're dealing with an RNA virus and trying to inhibit its replication, The Zelenko Protocol or modifications thereof, the bigger your gun, the better. All right. You want to shoot a big zinc bullet with a big gun into your cells, the virus from replicating. And your body, if there's anything left, your body will clean that up. It can deal. It's like having a roach come into your house, right? Find a roach. Oh, a cute little want to kill it, right? Oh, just wait. Next thing you know, you've got millions of roaches. And what is your response? You've got to bring in the exterminator. You're going to have to tear everything apart to find the eggs, right? Your response is going to have to be far greater than it would have been if you just killed that roach a couple of weeks before. And this is the same thing with viruses. Viruses are roaches. They come in, they self-replicate. Next thing they do is they overwhelm your body, and your body is in a highly reactive response. All hands on deck, 3-alarm fire department, SWAT team, police, right, to try to, crush the invader. And that causes a lot of damage. The immune system can literally burn itself down, burn the house down, trying to
Yeah.
destroy a pathogen. So it's very important to try to kill those pathogens early or prevent them from replicating. That's what early treatment is in some. And zinc plays a critical role in that.
So I've identified, well, we all have 4 different stages. Actually, 5. One I would call the preventative stage, a prophylaxis stage, where I would take a bit of quinine once a week, and then zinc every day and prevent to get sick in the first place. That's preventative, prophylaxis. Early treatment is the Zelenko Protocol, where you just got sick, you're not feeling well, boom. Now let's hit you with a zinc ionophore, that being quinine, HCQ, or your green tea extract. And then there's that's early treatment, and there's the late treatment. This is more like this is akin to Dr. Raoult from south of France, Marseille, where he uses HCQ and AZT. Can you explain those 3 different types of
Well,
stages?
again, Sammy, I think, we go back to the whole underlying problem that seems evident. 1 out of 2 severe COVID cases were zinc and vitamin D deficient, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if they were not zinc deficient, most likely they probably wouldn't have been severe COVID cases to begin with, right? So maintaining our zinc sufficiency on a daily basis, that's rule number 1. That's prophylactic prevention. Living healthy, organic foods. You can eat grains. If you eat grains, if you're vegan and you don't like to eat meat or seafood, which are your best sources of zinc, to explain, 50% of all of the zinc in our body are in our muscles. Right? Same thing goes for animals. 50% of all the zinc in an animal's body is in its muscles. What do we eat? We eat the muscles. Okay. Some plants have it, but then plants also have the problem of binding that zinc. So it, all right, they're called ligands. Concern that grains and many other, mass agricultural foodstuffs don't provide enough zinc that our bodies can absorb it for our bodies to
Mm-hmm.
absorb. So that's your prophylaxis, your prevention. Stay zinc sufficient. Then, even despite that, if you get enough viral, and they call it inoculum, if somebody spits in your face and it goes up your nose and down your lungs, that's a lot of virus, right? You're always going to have some virus. You want to have viruses, you want to have bacteria, because your body can identify them, fight them. It records them in a little book saying, oh, yeah, we fought this virus, we fought this bacteria. It puts it in the library so that it can build an antibody response in the future if it ever comes again. We do not want to live in a sterile environment. All right. That will weaken our immune system far more than being exposed on a daily basis to levels of pathogens and bacteria and whatever. We have to have that for our immune systems to work properly. But our immune system also requires that fundamental building block of zinc and all the other metal ions. Okay, and then, all right, and that's our prevention. That's where we start with prevention. So you get sick, then you apply a modified Zelenko protocol, or if you have hydroxychloroquine, again, that's the gun. I don't focus on hydroxychloroquine and Protocol Z. I'm loath to do that because we can anticipate that it will be highly restricted because of the controversy they built up over that. And they know. They don't want you, they do not want us to know about natural antivirals, such as the ones that Route 10. So that preventive aspect is one, and then being prepared on an early treatment stage. Now, if for some reason, this doesn't solve your problem, God forbid, I don't know how it would, unless they come up with a new twisting to it. Then obviously there's going to be an inflammatory response, and that's going to require a wholly different treatment process. But zinc will still be critical to that because zinc is involved in the inflammatory response element. That P53 protein I talked about regulates everything within our immune system. It sends the messages from on high down to the department head. The department head then signals all the different responses, right? So you need that zinc to make that P53 molecule or protein function properly. And if you don't have that, your immune system's going to be running around not knowing what to do, okay? So, or it's going to overreact. So I think zinc is a fundamental issue here. And that's my greatest revelation is the P53 protein because it regulates everything else, and especially in cancer, or fight cancer every day. And P53 is considered the guardian of the genome. It binds damaged DNA and prevents it from dividing. Damaged DNA that divides unrestricted is cancer. It's a tumor. P53 stops and regulates cellular division, and it will prevent damaged DNA from dividing until it's been either repaired or they signal the cell to be destroyed, and that's the body's response. Kill the cell, it's damaged, we can't repair it, kill it, we'll make another cell that's healthy. So, and zinc is critical to that.
So the cure for cancer for $5.
I wouldn't say it's a cure, but I say it's you're not going to truly cure cancer or prevent it if you're zinc deficient. That's my point. I don't want to say it's a cure because I don't want to test that theory ever on myself. But I certainly say if you're zinc deficient, you are more susceptible to getting cancer. My father and other relatives. I wish I had known then what I know now, and maybe the alternative, the scenarios would have been different, the outcomes. So maybe I could have saved my father's life.
Speaking of which, speaking of plans, what kind of plans do you have for your future? What kind of projects do you have upcoming? What kind of upcoming projects do you have?
Well, I want to.
Let me start.
I'm sorry.
Do you have it?
Okay.
I'm just going to repeat that because I got muddled up.
Go ahead. I'm reset.
Do you have any upcoming projects or areas of interest that you're excited to explore, Ron?
Well, I want to continue pursuing. I've only touched on the surface of zinc's role, but I also want to look at things like copper and magnesium and the interplay between all the different metal ions. Those are to explore. Obviously, we have world events. You and I both co-write on. Are going to deal with a lot of different aspects, intelligence, political, technology. But right now, I mean, what's more important than human health? If warfare underway, we are the victims, and they don't care. They want us to be the victims. They just want the money. So we have to be able to defend ourselves. So it's pretty critical in that sense. I take it very seriously. So additionally, I'm working on a product, which I'm drinking right now, my green tea extract product. And one of these days, I'd sure like to be able to market that to people, and be able to use that as a base. Green tea extract I found is almost as effective, if not more, than hydroxychloroquine. EGCG, green tea extract. Same thing like with pyrithione and the extract of Persian shallots, right? Natural ingredients, natural gun. And maybe that's why God, or whoever you believe in, nature created these products for us to enhance our immune systems. And we just learned to do that. So who would have guessed? We don't need the drugs. We don't need the vaccines. And they've known this. And how many people did they let die after Barrick
No, no.
engaged on his research and discovered natural ingredients to block, viral replication? But yet, we're going to do gain of function. We're going to pursue vaccines. Shh, let's don't talk about that. Broad spectrum, small molecule with natural ingredients approach. We'll keep that under our hat. Make some drugs out of that. We can sell for a greater value than $5 worth of natural ingredients. So I'm sorry, I can't, that's you can't call it conspiracy. That's the question that Ralph Barrick has to answer. And he needs to be hauled up before Congress. And not talking about gain of function. You want to stop gain of function? Then you basically remove the reason for it. If everybody is armed with the natural defense system against their bioweapons, well, fine. You want to throw your virus at me? Throw your virus at me. I'm taking my zinc and my Zelenko protocol, and I'm ready. I spit upon thee. And so imagine the amount of money that has gone into vaccine research, vaccine purchases, and where that deployed in a different way, building roads, bridges, bettering the lives of individual people, all right, giving more opportunity. But individuals that created very dangerous viruses then received the benefits financially and control wise, power wise.
Yeah,
Okay.
and protection from the dual use
Well,
thing, right?
I don't think there's dual use anymore. Vaccines, there's no peaceful reason for gain of function now, is there?
Yeah,
I mean, that's the implicit logic. Is that if you don't need to do gain of function to come up with a new vaccine against an unforeseen viral threat, right?
and it would be the
No,
other way
we've got
around, no? Isn't it the other way around? Shouldn't it be the virus first,
well,
then the vaccine, not the
but if they're working on gain of function and making things like H5N1, for example, they changed
yeah.
4 amino acids on H5N1. Yoshihiro Kawaoka, financed by Bill Gates, right? To the tune of $9.5 million in 2009. Bill Gates financed Dr. Yoshihiro Kawaoka in the University of Wisconsin to make H5N1 airborne transmissible. And all he had to do is change 4 acids in that virus, and it could, whereas before you had to touch the feces or the liquid, the bodily fluids of an
Mm.
infected bird,
Now it's
right? And it
airborne.
killed, and now it's airborne. But he successfully was able between ferrets, minks, ferrets, little weasels. And they do
Does
that
does
because,
Bill sorry, does
I'm
Bill
sorry,
Gates watch movies like I Am Legend and goes, "That's a great business plan"?
yeah, I believe so. I'm sorry, I believe so. That's my
That's
opinion.
seriously.
That's my opinion. He has to answer that for himself because he has to explain why he's not pursuing broad spectrum, small molecule solutions like the Zelenko Protocol, right?
Mhm.
That's exactly what the Zelenko Protocol is. It's a broad spectrum, small molecule therapeutic as being researched by Dr. Ralph Barrick to this day.
Yeah,
And no one wants to ask
yeah,
him. It's
yeah.
early treatment.
He also shut down Dr. Sabine Hassan, who came out with a protocol. She is the leading expert in her field, and Bill Gates got involved and shut down her work very early in the pandemic.
Yep. It's, money screams, money talks, and he had the means, and he finances the WHO, he finances Gathering Institute.
Media,
I'm sorry,
the media. He's
the
given
media. He
$330
controls
million,
yeah,
controls the media.
and him and his minions and his other, pharmaceutical minions. He's made 20 times his investment on these vaccines, billions of
Five hundred
dollars.
and fifty million dollars. $550 million in 2 years.
Yep. That's
50 million dollars in, return 500.
right. And so,
Not
would
bad,
you
huh?
do something like this if you were, if you had a criminal mind, extortion? Do you think this might be a good business plan? It seems to be the case, in my opinion, with this computer software, his operating
I
system.
was
If
going
you
to
got a
say
virus,
in the 90s. That's how I know Bill
yeah,
Gates, because I was around in the 90s and I was working on a movie called Matrix, and this problem was coming up, and it was just obvious, like, who's selling the antivirus? Is it,
bingo.
and where's this
Or who?
virus coming from? It seems so logical for like my 22-year-old brain who just finished engineering, and I was like, really?
Yeah. I think with all the
Like,
antivirus software, because they would have had to have access to the Windows code, all right, then I think there's probably some, incestuous relationship between, Microsoft, Bill Gates, and these antivirus. And all here, we're susceptible. We're creating flawed software. We have to patch it. We have to, yeah, there's a money opportunity there. We have to provide a solution to our flawed product, which, the consumer doesn't own. It's only licensed, right? So they have to buy a new operating system to fix the things they should in the first one. So yeah, it's a
yeah,
business model. That's called rent seeking. In economic terms, it's called rent seeking. You're seeking, right?
yeah.
Uh,
You have a background in economics as well, right? Can you
I
elaborate
have,
briefly about that?
yeah, I mean, it's all part of the, my college degree. I had to take economics. I don't have a degree in economics or in international security policy, political science, which is kind of an oxymoron. But
It
it's
is.
it's history.
It's history.
I'm very laid back about this. I'm not pretentious about my academic background. I was president. It doesn't matter because real world education and real world understanding of events and what causes them to transpire, that's your real education. And that comes through experience and watching and observing over the course of many years or learning from. So uh, that's the real education. Everything else is illusion.
Any last thoughts before we wrap this up?
Um, my last thought is, by God, if you do after listening to this, is make sure you're zinc sufficient and you're sufficient in all of your magnesium, your selenium. That doesn't mean overdosing. You don't want to overdose, but just make sure you're not deficient. All right. And all of the researchers out there say about zinc, they tell you to take 15 zinc on average as you my age, middle age, right, or older you get, take a little more. Understand that the supplements are not based on elemental zinc. All right. This was a discovery I also researched in the book. Zinc sulfate, which I took, is elemental zinc. That's elemental zinc is the kind of zinc you get from your meat, from animals, animal tissue or seafood, right? That's the type of zinc that our body best utilizes. So if you're taking 100 milligrams of zinc sulfate per day, which I do because I'm 100 kilos, 20 pounds, um, I take 100 milligrams of zinc sulfate every day, split it up morning and evening. All right, so I can sleep good at night, incredibly well. Um, that's 20 milligrams of actual zinc, elemental zinc. And then I add my green tea extract product. My inflammation, I have a bad knee. I had knee surgery a number of years ago, They tell me I need a knee replacement at some time in the future. That's an aside. But I've had a lot of inflammation in the past, and it hurts a lot. And since I've upped my zinc levels and I again take my green tea extract, my inflammation's going down markedly. I'm also losing weight. So diabetes, zinc is critical in diabetes control. There's so many different functions zinc that require zinc in our body. Get on Google and start researching any malady you
Well,
have, any problem you
maybe
have.
not Google. Maybe not
Well,
Google.
whatever your search engine is, Google can't completely censor peer-reviewed papers. These are peer-reviewed
Yeah,
papers, right?
you would think.
And they're implicit in their diabetes, autism. I'm still trying to, tuberculosis. That was the one I was trying to think of earlier. Tuberculosis. Everybody who has tuberculosis, for the most part, is zinc deficient, right?
I would add go on NFTBOOKS .info and buy a book, Protocol Z.
My book, I think,
Uh,
and we can put the notes here. And
we are.
I also strongly would suggest if people want to learn more, come to Men in Black
Go,
articles, Men in Black Substack.com,
meninblack.com.
and we'll put that link in the show notes. Um,
The French version of Protocol Z is coming out soon. 4 chapters to go. It's
Thanks
not a
to you.
grind. It's not a, you. I understand you better in French, by the way. Are you sure you're not part French?
I don't know. Parlez-vous français?
Oui,
Je ne
oui,
comprends
bien
pas.
sûr. Ben oui, mais oui, Ronald. Bien sûr, je parle français.
I suppose. I mean, I drink enough canned Spanish to get myself drunk. I took a number of years of Spanish, so I can get along in Spanish all right. But French, yeah, that's tough on my tongue.
Yeah, they're just mainly complaining you're not missing anything. We also have, I'm just this joke.
That's
It's a fact too. But we also have probably a print copy coming out soon. I should check my email first before bringing this up. So,
I hope so. I
uh,
hope we will have a
yeah,
printed
me too.
copy
Me too.
forthcoming
Yeah,
at
yeah,
some point. Right now we have an ebook. Okay, I'm still having
yeah,
issues with and the offering the book via a gateway, a financial gateway to accept credit
yeah,
cards. We're still
yeah.
pursuing that. If anybody has a suggestion, I would
Hmm.
like to be able. It's a 5 megabyte book with embedded links in it in a PDF format. Something you can put on your
Awesome, awesome.
tablet and read
It,
on an
it
afternoon
does
by
have
the
a lot of
pool.
hyperlinks. It
It sure
does.
does. It
It
brings
sure
the
does, mate.
receipts. It brings the
Yeah.
receipts.
Um,
And that's what's fundamentally different about Protocol Z than in any other book about it is we bring the peer-reviewed links.
yeah.
So
It's
nobody can disparage it. If you
well
disparage
that
it, you're
format.
disparaging all of the peer-reviewed links.
Yeah, that
Go ahead.
format basically every page you have two to three hyperlinks, and you could go and click on anything, and it'll take you right there. You're in for a dive. You're going onto YouTube. You go
This
onto medical journals. You're going to other books. You're going to like you could contact us through Men in Black. You could ask us questions. You could buy the book on the NFT block. You could resell it. Because this is going to be a really really important book. You need to have. There's only 1,000 copies in English, 1,000 copies in French, and soon paper print in the US of A, of course. Freedom of
Well,
speech.
the reason we did it, and it was your approach to this, is looking at the NFT books and crypto, is it moralizes the book. It puts it on a blockchain to where it's not easy to censor it and the critical nature of it.
Mm.
Unfortunately, I mean, only limited people involved in the crypto community are able to access it. But I have
Yeah.
7 billion potential customers awaiting this
Mm.
information. And I'm not going to be flippant about this. I'm not, 4 years ago, I didn't know any of this stuff. I didn't lever hours of intensive research. And I realized how ignorant I was. And I don't want to be that way anymore. So we have to understand how our bodies work and not rely upon our trusted medical sources, which, good. You got a broken bone. I don't want to fix that myself. I go to a doctor for that, right? Hopefully a properly trained doctor. But when it comes to RNA viruses, most of these doctors are ignorant of all of the research, the peer-reviewed research that's out there. I know I've had doctors in the
Yep.
past during the first year of COVID, they were about this.
Yeah.
And I tried to educate them, but well, they don't want to risk their medical practice because
They got bills to
if
pay,
they
mate. They're trapped. They're trapped. It's a
they're trapped.
jujitsu
I think a
move.
lot of them are
They
trapped.
they're trapped.
But if they
They
had been
are.
armed with Ralph Barrick's paper and his name, and if they had been able to invoke Ralph Barrick's reputation to back this broad spectrum small molecule, as Ralph Barrick calls them, right? That's the term that Ralph Barrick uses. And it sounds scientific. Hey, look, there's a broad spectrum small molecule therapy that's been researched by this Dr. Ralph Barrick, who was the leading gain of function expert who was researching the SARS-2 virus, right? You know, wow. How can anybody disparage that? You disparage Ralph Barrick, you've disparaged everything involved in vaccine and gain, right? And so if people are out there advocating early treatment, they need to research to um, invoke his name. Do not let anybody say, "Oh, you're an idiot." What do you mean, zinc and hydroxychloroquine or green tea extract? Well, this guy Ralph
Right.
Barrick, he did it with Persian shallot extract and zinc, and
Mhm.
he's got 40 years of experience. He's a member of the National Academy of Sciences. Don't you think somebody needs to ask him some questions? I would love to ask him some questions.
I've noticed that a lot of people who were censoring us, who are treating us like that through the last year, are just passing away. Suddenly, the CEO of YouTube, who went out of her way to censor stuff, which was so common, which was common knowledge. It was common sense, and she sadly passed away with so many others. We tried to warn you. Um, that's the logic was like, we had like, oh, you're not vaccinated, you will die, and this and that. It's like we're there was not a game for us to say you're going to die or you were wrong. It's like there's no way out of this. Once you've passed away, there's no you see I told you so. There's no I told you so. It's over unless you believe in a higher.
Yeah, it's sad. I mean, that we
It's
even came
pretty.
to the level of somebody had to restrict the scientific method, scientific research. All right. You'll, and again, I'm sorry, I cannot look the fact that a lot of very wealthy people profited to a great degree, while a lot of people suffered at their expense.
Yeah,
And they did not have our best heart, as far as I'm concerned.
no.
Um, and they seem to have cognition. You being from Hollywood, you remember Minority Report, where precognition of a crime. Well,
Precog,
they
yeah.
certainly had precognition of what was about to unfold. Bill Gates had been warning about the pandemic, the next one that was in this time. Uh, Fauci was doing the same thing in 2017. They all knew it because they were about ready to make it happen. And so that's the implicit. They denied us, um, the early treatment protocols. And,
That's right.
one of the things I delve into in the book as well, which we haven't touched upon, I think it's critical. I have a theory, and I think it's a pretty compelling theory, that there is a new vaccine technology they're promoting called self-amplifying mRNA. And I stumbled upon this in July of 2021, the first reference to this. And when I went and researched it, I found out that they're effectively taking the, let's say, a spike protein, right? They put it on the end of an mRNA segment, the instruction set, to get our bodies to make our 3D protein printer ribosomes to make the spike protein, all right, and then induce an immune response. Well, what they're doing now is they're taking stripped down viral replicates, the argument of a virus genetic code. They strip everything away and then they reattach the desired spike protein or an antigen from avian flu or whatever. And this will
Mm-hmm.
now self replicate, right? Because it's attached to this RDRP complex called a replicon. They use replicon as a term. It's a virus. It's a viral vaccine. They're injecting us with a virus that will then replicate this antigen. Okay, let's call it what it is. It's a viral vaccine. And if I can block the native natural RNA virus replication, then I can block the self-amplifying mRNA. They've spent hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars, in 20 years researching using viral vaccines and viral gene therapies. All right. And they had all this to lose if RDRP inhibitors like the Zelenko Protocol became well known and understood. How many people must die to protect that type of investment? Everybody's collateral damage in pharma's mindset. And
Yeah.
I think that's
Oh
ultimately
yeah.
what they did. They were trying to protect amplifying mRNA. Now, there's a company, go into some, it's in the book. Okay. There's a company that had done a joint venture with a Japanese company. Well, you can go to the book and read it. And they were ready to make 1 billion doses of self-amplifying mRNA vaccines every year, starting in October of 2024. Well, it looks like the word got out, and now they're not doing well. There's a big question on manufacturing. So why do we need a vaccine if I can neutralize it? A viral vaccine, I can neutralize it with $5 worth of natural products. That's the same thing with gain of function. Why do you need gain of function? Why do you need vaccines? Treat the sick. Find the people who are sick. Keep these people sick, all right? In the first place, or it fortifies their immune system to a greater degree, so their chance of getting sick less. And if they do, then you can augment that zinc and stop that replication to a greater extent. And your body will mop all the remaining virus and build up a repository of data on the genetic code of that virus and be prepared to make antibodies in the future. A very simple, natural solution and a very logical one.
Got it.
Yeah.
Ron, I want to thank you for your time and joining us on our podcast, Rumours Intelligence. Be sure to check out our book, Protocol Z. And until the next time, stay curious, stay informed, back out. See you, everyone.
Okay. Did you want me to respond on that or?